You felt like cooking today.
I'm just hungry, Dave. Well,
I can see this.
You know, when we first spoke, you said you were trying to gain some weight. It's like, we're prepped now. So you're going to go back, you're going to see Jay next time in Vegas, and you're going to be, what, 15 pounds heavier. You've gone full-time bodybuilder. So what we've got here, guys, is a full day of eating for a diet I was sent by an Ifbb pro. He's actually in classic physique, but he's got a crazy metabolism. And the issue that I'm getting a lot of people talking about now, and him specifically, but it's the off season. How do we get past eating plateaus? So it's when you're trying to increase calorific intake in the off season, maybe trying to, well, just build muscle or move up a weight class. How do we get past sticking points? So this is a sample diet. I thought, what better way than to show what a diet is, and then we're going to do how do we get past these sticking points. So we'll go over what this is. It's a ton of food, it's a lot of volume. This is actually his meal one, which is 10 egg whites, 4 whole eggs, 150 grams dry weight of oats, which is about 6 ounces dry weight, and obviously 2 pieces of toast with jam and a whole apple. This is 2 cups of rice, 7 ounces of chicken, and 2 spoons of almond butter. That's meal 2.
Yep.
Meal 3, I mean, what a generic diet, right? Chicken and rice. You couldn't have a more stereotypical diet if we tried. But yeah, that's again 200 grams of chicken, 2 cups of rice, very plain meal 3. Then we're on to the pre-workout. Now I'm going to say this diet, I'm going to say, is atypical of what a modern day bodybuilder's diet has become. This 10 years ago wouldn't be around. Like the muffins wouldn't be around. The post-workout will be completely different, but this is where it's changed. So as knowledge has expanded and as food choices have expanded, diets have shifted. And especially since the advent of social media, certain foods trend and become cool and trendy. So coaches will often put them into diet plans, and you know, it's a way of getting clients. Look what I'm eating. I get to eat cereal, I get to eat muffins, and I'm actually going to go into the muffin in a little bit more depth once we've gone through this, because there may be some magic in the muffins people are talking about. So we've got 1 muffin pre-workout, and again 2 cups of rice and 7 ounces of chicken. And post-workout is again 7 ounces of chicken, but you've got the bagel with the jam and 150 grams dry weight of cereal,
which is almost half the box when you put it in there.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
Honestly, his diet was Rice Krispies, but you've got to try those. They're addictive.
The chocolate cornflakes.
The corn. So corn, actually find that people with, I mentioned earlier, a lot of GI distress over the years and autoimmune recently. It's all come from leaky gut. So I actually found that corn is pretty neutral and well taken up. And if you think back, like even back to Ronnie, he had like the grits and the cornbread, but I just find it very inoffensive as opposed to a lot of the other cereals. I mean, rice is obviously okay with people, but we start looking at like wheat and some of the other grains. They have inflammatory responses and can be very permeable to a gut, so they can cause issues. Once that gut is being penetrated, then you're going to get all kinds of things leaking into the bloodstream, and that's when you get an immune response, and it can be, as I've experienced, end up being autoimmune. It's going to attack another part of your body. So it can be anything, whatever it decides to attack. We have a pancreas, I've had hypothyroid, and also my adrenals. So I had 3 separate bouts. It's attacked. The immune response has been at a different part of the body every single time. So I actually quite like corn. That's the reason it's there. On this meal also, I'm going to draw your attention to the chicken. Now that's shredded. So before we hack the diet into food changes, let's look at the practical applications of this diet, like how can we improve it? Because typically you are going to have shredded chicken. I like shredded chicken, I like shredded beef, and I like not very well cooked meats because they digest all that much better. We're always in a rush and we don't chew our food properly. So when you've got big chunks of meat going down, it's going to sit there a lot longer. We want this food to digest pretty rapidly. So that's almost like being pre-digested. It's already chewed almost for you. So if you can get shredded or ground meats and keep them pretty soft as opposed to really drying them out, because when you overcook a meat, it dries it out and you've got to have more fluid afterwards. It's got to rehydrate it before you get full digestion. That just makes it a whole lot easier on the gut. So these are all small tips that might make like move the needle 1 or 2%, but you compound that meal on meal over time, you're going to get that backup effect. If you're looking at these small things, that's food on top of food on top of food, which is a big problem, not just for appetite and getting the food down, but inflammatory responses within the system. And once you start getting inflamed, you're in a whole world of trouble. Well, we'll touch on that afterwards. And so that's post-workout. And final meal, 8 ounces of salmon, and that's another 100 grams, so that's like 3 and a bit ounces dry weight of oats. So this is a pretty dense amount of food. You can see there's not really many greens or anything in there, so I'll take a look at the micronutrient efficiency of it, because micronutrients play a large part. But if I'm going to look at this diet now, okay, before we start playing with anything, we've got to look at why are you not able to eat your food. Is it been a recent increase in food and you just can't manage the extra load? Or is it's been at this level for a few weeks and now your appetite's just started to drop off? If it's the secondary case, then that might be a case of your body's inflamed and your central nervous system's getting run down. And if that's happened, your immune system's going to start to be compromised if you keep pushing forward. In which case, it might not be just a straight food issue. You might need to take a week of deloaded training, reducing stress on your body and pulling back and getting more sleep and pulling back on the food obviously for a week, and then you'll be able to move forward again. So it's not always about let's start pulling the diet to pieces. If it's been working to a point and you've not changed it, then it's likely something's not functioning correctly in your body. So that would be the first thing I would ask. And then the next question would be, where are you not hungry? You might be plowing through meal 1, meal 2, no problem, meal 3, but when it comes to, you don't want to eat pre-workout. And pre-workout nutrition, I think, is probably more important than post-workout nutrition. For a lot of reasons, and we're going to talk about the muffin shortly. So if you can pinpoint that, then it might be a food type, and it might just be one meal we need to look at changing, or it might be a compound of food upon food upon food, which is where I would start looking at maybe adding a digestive product. Like we have Ravenous that we offer, and that's betaine, HCl, full digestive enzyme complex, and also some oxbile in there, which helps the digestion of fats. So it covers everything. So that could be implemented when you're getting a sticking point within the diet. So once you've got those bases covered, then you're going to be pretty much pinpointed where it's happening in the diet, or if it's not a food increase. If it's a food increase, then okay, let's look at the food choices. If training's been pretty much constant, but you just can't handle the food because the food volume's gone up and your weight's stagnated, then after you've looked at the digestion, you've worked the digestive enzymes in there, you're going to have to start looking at using some more refined foods or some more fun carbs in this case, you know. But we're going to do that after this. It'll be part 2. We're going to actually hack this whole diet, and I'm going to show you how you can pull food volume down and get hormonal responses that's going to increase your hunger and increase your appetite. But I'm going to give you a couple of tips first. I'm going to give you one big one. So how would you typically eat this meal, Dave? Like if I was going to, Dave, how would you eat that meal? Like what would your typical approach be to eating the meal?
With a fork?
Well,
I don't know.
We don't have forks here, but like most people would start to eat the protein first.
Right.
Okay. A way of increasing appetite first is something called incretins. So these are things that are in the intestine that actually signal for insulin release. They actually regulate insulin, glucagon, gastric emptying, a bunch of things. But if you eat your carbohydrate first, there's actually studies and research showing that you can get a greater insulin release, but this also tracked the ghrelin response. Now, ghrelin's a hunger hormone. In the study they carried out, they actually found out that ghrelin release was increased by eating the carbohydrate first and the vegetable and the protein second. They actually did 3 different sequences of food, and the carbohydrate had a much larger response. And after 3 hours, ghrelin had peaked so much that they were ready to eat again.
Wow.
So this was all measured and tracked. So there's just one tip for you guys.
Yeah.
It's
I've heard the opposite. Always eat the protein first to make sure you actually eat it, but in the carbs after.
Yeah,
So
because people might. You're a bodybuilder, you're going to eat this meal.
Yeah.
That might take you an hour. If you're a hardcore, you're eating that meal. So that's going down regardless.
Yeah.
But that might make the next meal a little bit easier.
Yeah.
For the ghrelin response and the hormone.
That's a good tip.
These incretins are something that aren't talked about, and I'm going to go into a lot more depth because they actually play a part in the muffin. So we'll talk about the muffin.
All right.
Now, the pre-workout muffin became so popular thanks to one Mr. Crisacito.
Muffin Man.
He's awesome. I love him to bits. But yeah, he's responsible for the muffins. I think it was Pop-Tarts maybe he did before that, and it moved to the muffins. Yeah, I'm going back. So if you look at the composition of a muffin, you're going to have, I think that one's about 52 grams of carbs, about 21 grams of sugar, and maybe about 8 or 10, no, I think it's 10 or 11 grams of fat. So it's a mixed meal in essence. Protein, fats and carbohydrates, particularly sugars. So as soon as you eat the muffin, the sugars are going to signal for these incretins to secrete insulin, which just to give you some idea of an incretin response, if I gave you, this was a study done in 1964 in the University of Colorado. I can actually get that and publish it if needed. They IV'd subjects with glucose, so it's IV straight into the vein and put glucose in there, and then they tracked the blood glucose response and the insulin response, and then had the same amount of glucose and they ingested it orally. The blood glucose lines between the 2 administrations was almost identical. There was no real difference in blood glucose. So if you're measuring your client's blood glucose, you're a coach, or you're looking at your own blood glucose level, it's not always the best indicator of what's going on. So the insulin response was dramatically different. Most people would think if you're IVing glucose, then that's going to give you the most insulin response. It's wrong, because it's not. It's bypassing the digestive tract, and it's bypassing the incretins, and the incretins basically have the ability to tell the pancreas to secrete a lot of insulin. Basically, there's a lot of sugars, there's a lot of fast energy coming in before it hits the bloodstream. Get ready to pump insulin. So I think it was maybe 3 or 4 times higher, the amount of insulin, and the area under the curve was just that much greater. So you're going to get the incretin response from the muffin. You also can signal to slow down gastric emptying. So there's a playoff between GIP and GLP-1, 2 of the incretins. So what you're going to see happen with the muffin is, because it's got fat in there, it's going to slow down the digestion. You get an initial spike, and then you're going to get the signal, whoa, it's too much is coming in too quickly, so they're going to slow down gastric emptying. So you're going to get the prolonged release of glucose, which is great. We want an insulin response pre-training. So this is where the magic of the muffin comes in. You have high insulin going into your training session, and through training you stop muscle protein breakdown. It's also going to help deliver intra-workout nutrition. So that might be your citrulline, your amino acids, and anything else you care to put in there. Creatine, you have it intra-workout or pre. It's going to be a delivery mechanism for all those nutrients. And that's basically the keys to the muffin. But if you look at type 1 diet, you look at diabetics in general, whenever they eat a mixed meal, they will often have to administer insulin for a second time from that mixed meal. So that's almost, when in a healthy person, that means you're going to get a second release of insulin. So it's almost like having 2 peaks, taking almost replicating a Humulin R across your workout period. So you're going to get delivery up front with continuous release of blood glucose, and then when probably the signaling goes, okay, we're good, blood glucose is good, you're going to have another secondary response, another dump, and get another spike of insulin. So that's kind of giving you some idea why a mixed meal, or the sugars and fats, particularly it's the sugars and fats to be honest, really could be magical around your workout time. So there is some method behind the muffin madness. But any other time, I want to stress, I would not advise mixed meals, because what's going to happen over time, again, this study is showing this, if you keep having mixed meals, you're going to get more of an insulin response. One, heightened, and two, duration of time. As opposed to eating a high carb, even a high sugar meal with low fat, you'll get a peak, which still won't be as high as a mixed meal, and it'll obviously drop a lot quicker. So the area you're under the curve is much less. So if we're trying to reduce damage to the body, inflammation, and insulin resistance, and prolong an off season, we really need to be careful about the fuel substrates we're putting in, the nutrient timing. Because you can really cut your off season short by having a lot of processed carbohydrates or sugars along with a good level of fats at the same time. You're going to have elevated insulin all the time, you're never going to get back to baseline. You're going to cause insulin resistance and inflammation, and every disease pretty much stems from inflammation. So there's just a few take homes. When you're looking at nutrition, you can't just look at macros, you've got to look at the composition. So the incretin signaling is basically brought about, the insulin response, by the actual structure of the carbohydrate. So sugars, but even broken carbohydrates, like cracked wheat as opposed to whole grain wheat, like any processing of the carbohydrate to interfere with its natural structure is going to cause more of an insulin response. So this is where I'm going to say, look, bro foods, bodybuilder foods, unprocessed foods are going to be much more progressive over time if you can eat them, as opposed to the if it fits your macros crew. Because you might get away with it once or twice, but over time, especially in a calorie surplus, that's going to cause damage at a cellular level, it's going to cause inflammation. So that's, I don't know, everyone's arguing about foods, and it's like, look, and the only way people counter argue is that, well, these foods have always worked. But I'm trying to give a little bit of insight as to why they are working.
Yeah.
And yes, you can use these processed foods, but they're a very, very small window of opportunity. They're going to be beneficial and not detrimental.
That's right.
So I think that pretty much wraps up this part. It gives you an idea of what an off-season day of eating is, but also a little bit of insight of you need to be paying attention to the food source, the food quality, and the composition of the food to develop a diet and to keep your off-season progressive without cutting it short, because we want the off-season to be health-wise causing as little damage as possible, because anything in a calorie surplus for a long period of time is not ideal for a long-term strategy. That's why bodybuilding always gets the reset of a diet. It can also restore health, because you're getting insulin sensitivity back and the body's cleaning itself out in effect. So I think that's about it for this part, Dave. Hopefully some people have got a few nuggets to take home and start, playing with the diet and looking a little bit deeper.
Yep.
The whole incretin thing's a section itself, so we'll go into more depth about that, the interplay between GLP, GIP, and what's going on, and publish a few other studies. But I just want to give people an overview and just like, okay, there's more going on, and this never gets talked about because it's probably not very well understood or even known about.
Thank you, Joe.
No worries.
Hi, Dave Man Max 6, and we are back with episode 2 of the Almost Unfair Advantage with 1AD. And I have the great pleasure today to introduce you guys to the founder and CEO of Project AD, Joe Binley. What's going on, man?
I'm good, man. Thank you very much for having us.
It's great to have you, man. I was hoping to get you in episode 1 with Brad, but you actually decided to let him have the spotlight for that day. And we had a great response, almost 40,000 views since we posted an episode about his low-carb diet and his competition coming up, and his unusual way of training, agility and all that stuff. And yeah. I thought it was a great video. What did you think of it?
Brad's an outlier. He's been with me for 4 years now. Him and Dom are my longest serving US athletes. So
Dominic
Cardone, who's actually coming on next month.
You!
So
all the way from New York.
New Jersey, we're flying him in from New York. He's going to be at the Legion Fest show that weekend, and we're going to get him into Gold's Gym training and let him tell his story a little bit, because he was the youngest bodybuilder to turn pro, and then Cody Montgomery broke that record after that. But he's been through a lot, and he's a very old head on young shoulders, and he's still only 26, and he's been around for so long.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for him to come and for you to get to know him. But he's been with me, and look, he's just one of these guys who I don't think's ever had the platform to truly show like all the strings to his bow. You know, he's a great athlete, as you saw, agility. He's very knowledgeable in bodybuilding supplementation, but also in health.
Yeah.
And he's developed his physique probably more in the last 12 months, 18 months, since he took over his own nutrition than he had in the previous 2 or 3 years, you know, prior to that.
Yeah.
So he's a personification pretty much of what the brand is. You know, all been understated for a while, but very hardworking and always one step ahead in experimenting and trying to do different things. As you saw, like, it's far from conventional what he's been doing, but
it's working.
Works,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
I really enjoyed that.
So Joe, I want to talk a little bit about you today, because you're still very young. You're only 34 years old, which I'm shocked, because when I talk to you,
look older. That's why.
No, but when I talk to you, you sound so mature and so, you know, it's like you had a lot of lives already. You lived a lot of lives. But you started Project AD about 10 years ago. You just celebrated your 10th anniversary at the Olympia. And you have a lot of athletes. You already mentioned Brad Rowe and Dominic Cardone, but you have many more, including the reigning Women's Physique Olympia, Shanique Grant, which is awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to having her on. So the whole goal is, like, Dave, we've got this opportunity to work with yourself and Jay on JTV, is to really bring people to the audience. To each of them have got their own unique quirks. So when I bring an athlete onto the brand, one, they've got to fit the culture of the brand, which I've instilled from day one, but they've also got to have their own story and be a brand in themselves, because if you're a brand owner and part of a brand or managing a brand, you can't be dogmatic into like the old way of thinking where the brand is what everybody thinks about. Now it's about the athletes, it's about the people representing the brand. So you've got to develop their personal brands and make sure they've got the platform to reach the target demographic they're trying to reach. And the brand's almost secondary now. So it's where there's been you'll see a lot of old brands that struggle. It's because they've maybe a little bit stuck in their ways, or even a little bit arrogant in thinking a bit of delusions of grandeur, that the brand is everything. And you need to take a step back and just look what social media has done. People track with the athletes and individuals. So you need to appreciate that and embrace it and work with them as part of a team, rather than bringing them on, giving them a contract and dictating. And that's something we do very differently. I restrict the amount of posts they have to do and work with them away from the brand. If there's anything we can do to develop their brand on the website, business advice. You know, I think I've touched most of my athletes in some way regarding their development, either on stage or off stage in a business sense.
Well, tell me a little bit about how you started. You told me when we first started talking, and we were talking about partnering up with Jay, you said, I'm just like Jay, I'm a farm boy, I was raised on a farm. So take me back a little bit and tell me, you know, a little bit about your history and how you got involved into bodybuilding and why you like it so much and why you started Project 80.
Yes, I mean, I started lifting when I was 15. I was always active in sport. So if I go all the way back, soccer, cricket, even golf. But I mean, if it was in summer and I was playing cricket at the age of 10, I'd be playing 6 days a week, and they were competitive games. So I would play like the under 11s, 13s, 15s, 17s, and 2 men's games, and maybe another third men's game in the cup. So that's probably why I've got an old head on my shoulders. I always used to be mixing with older people, but my weight held me back a little bit. So I was a little chubby. I wasn't like, say, like obese, but it was enough to hold my sporting performance back. And a lot of it was through, it wasn't bad diet, because I had a really traditional farm upbringing. So it was home cooked foods, it was quality, but it was just a lot, you know, and I can eat. Which we're going to, funny, because we're actually going to be discussing eating coming up. So I went through that and I started digging down on, a lot of people will start training and they'll focus on the training. I started looking straight away at nutrition, because I knew nutrition was the key, and supplementation really was a red flag to me. It's like, okay, there's got to be something to this. See, everyone gets bought into the romance of supplements. Like, there's a magic pill out there. There is a magic pill, seriously. That's what they'll tell you. I won't, because there isn't. But there are tools that can help you with a good nutritional approach, or even ways to hack nutrition if you've got gaps there. So I started importing products from the States when I was 17 because I couldn't find what I wanted from the UK. The UK was always behind the US. The USA market was the dominant market, the one that everybody looked to. Everyone was on the US boards and looking at bodybuilding.com as the primary retailer. And the magazines were huge. So it's like, I used to wait to get like the Muscular Development magazine. It was always like 2 or 3 months behind of what's actually happening in the US, but that's where all the information was. So I was importing products then, and then I started buying raw materials when I think I was 18, because I just kept seeing gaps, like, well, I want this product for this purpose, but there's nothing there that can do it. So I'd have the full-time bodybuilder skills, Dave, and I'd be weighing out raw materials and making my own concoctions, and that.
Where would you find those? I mean, how did you find where to buy the material? Did you just research?
You could buy single. There was still places like, I guess over here you've got places like My Protein's everywhere now, but there wasn't back in the day, like True Nutrition. There were smaller places you could buy them for that probably aren't still around now, where you'd be able to get like creatine, glutamine and some amino acids, protein, different proteins. So you could have like micellar casein, you could get isolate, you can get concentrate, and carbohydrates. So, and obviously the stimulants, you can still get caffeine powder and everything, or caffeine capsules. And I actually even have my own capping device, so I'll be making my own capsules.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, probably not what your average 18-year-old would be doing, you know. But
yeah.
That's pretty much where it all started. And I didn't really intend going to university, but as a safeguard I decided to. So as you alluded to before, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. And like anything with university, I went without visiting. So I grew up in the north of England, and I went to university in the south of Wales. So you couldn't really get any further. I got my acceptance, drove down, and that was it. We started, and that plays a lot into it because it was in business, but I specialised in purchasing and supply chain management. So that's sourcing materials, negotiating deals, looking at authenticity of materials that you're bringing in. So by the age of 20, halfway through my degree, it was a 4-year course, I'd already sourced raw materials from China. I had 6 formulas already written out, and they were pretty much ready to go as soon as I finished university, because I was always going to do this. The degree was merely there to fall back on in case everything went wrong.
So you always wanted to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, I always did, and it's strange that I did at that age, but it just came to me. I fell in love with bodybuilding, and the nutrition side really appealed to me. And it's just, you know, you follow your passion and you've got to try it, right? So I was lucky enough to have a mother who supported me to the hill, so she always encouraged me, and I always had to fight my father against that, but
you're an ally.
I pursued that. Yeah, she was enough to give me enough confidence in myself, because I hadn't travelled, Dave. So when I say I was a farm boy, I didn't go on an aeroplane until I was 19, I don't think. And I think my second ever flight was in 2009 to the Olympia.
Wow.
To meet my manufacturer for AD. So if I'm looking back, I've done some pretty nuts things the last 10 years to launch the brand, but you've got to take the risks, and I've always taken calculated risks. So that's how the brand started. I've always manufactured in the US, and because of the exchange rate, like, people couldn't do that now. The exchange rate, the economy played a big role in that. So when I started manufacturing over here, the British pound would probably buy you anywhere in the region of $1.85 to $1.92.
So almost double.
Almost 2 to 1.
Yeah.
So that means I could manufacture in the States and put together a really badass formula, which was Toro Test, my first product, and that was nearly $30 to manufacture. But I knew my first product had to be a home run.
Yeah.
And I had to hit a gap in the market that I could work with other brands. And that's a theme that's carried on continuously. It's not fighting other brands, it's working with them. because I wasn't a direct competitor with proteins and stuff. I was looking for innovative product that were in niches that I could complement other companies, because that was the only business model that I'd be able to grow the company. So that was like, I'd continue to do that and release another new product maybe every 6 to 12 months as I could afford it. I never took any money out of the company.
How would you survive?
I had 3 jobs.
Oh, tell me, what were those jobs?
I was still working on the farm when I was needed, which I wouldn't really class that as a job because I wouldn't take money because I was still living at home. So as soon as I finished university, I moved back home to live on the farm and take care of my mother, who was she was diagnosed with cancer. So I wanted to be close to her.
Yeah.
And I was doing consultancy work, which was a lot of written work, so written content. So it was research. I think the first 6 months we did about 70,000 words.
Wow.
And then I would take a little bit of agency work here and there. So I'd maybe work some nights, or you get called in to do some day shifts, but a lot of it was night work at a newspaper factory. Like you'd go in and they'd run the newspapers at the night, so I'd do that. And that was just I didn't have to take any money out of the company, because I just felt guilty, Dave. Like if I was taking money out of the company, then I always price things in products. So I'm like, well, that just cost me a couple of $100. That could be like 17 bottles of product. And then you'd be like, well, that's 17 bottles of, that's another, how much profit? I'm like,
that's right.
You know what, I'll just sleep in the car tonight, you know? I would say this, even now, Dave, I'm still the same. Like the sales guys, my team will tell you, like, when it comes to myself, I'm just like a tight ass. I try and be generous to the others around me because I want them to have a
You
good
are
time.
generous. Yeah, you've been sending me stuff before we were just strangers. You know, you're very generous.
But even last week in Vegas, so I went to Supply Side West, and I'm digressing, we'll cut this like short, but I was at the convention centre. Supply Side West, for anyone who doesn't know that, it's a big convention. All the raw material suppliers come in. It's a huge show, 2 days. So like, there was an offer on the Westgate. Like the Westgate's a good hotel near the convention centre, and I was like, I've never stayed there for the Olympia, it's always sold out. And I think it was like $180 before they had the resort tax and things like that. So I was like, you know what, that's a good deal. Well, long story short, I ended up staying somewhere which was $95 for 3 nights. Like that was last week, so that's run through me all the way through the company, and that's the only way you can, if you're looking to launch a business, and I was just talking to you about this, Dave, you've got to watch the pennies or the cents more than you watch the pound, more than you watch the dollars.
Yeah.
Because you'll notice the dollars, but those cents add up.
Yeah.
And as your company grows, if you don't pay attention to those cents, then they'll end up costing you more than a huge error that's a dollar amount. And if you start getting the company bigger with staff, if that attitude starts to creep throughout the company culture, then you're absolutely screwed.
Yeah.
So I take my time. When I've built the brand, I've always brought the right people on. And I'll take time to get to know athletes and to know staff. It's never a quick decision about bringing an athlete on. So people who are watching this, who are looking for sponsorship, it's like, take your time to see who you want to align yourself with as a brand. Just don't whore yourself out saying you're looking for sponsorship. Like, find one that's fits with your morals, your ethical beliefs, and also your way of advertising. You know, you might be all about flashing your body and like the fast lifestyle, going out party lifestyle. That wouldn't be a fit with AD. You know, you might be more of an educational based athlete and more progressive with a long-term plan. That's something I look for. I'm going to give you one example before we move on. Hassan Mustafa. The reason I mention Hassan is because next year I believe he's going to make a huge impact, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't place in the top 10 at the Olympia, and that's a little bit of an understatement. He's amazing, but I think we announced him maybe in May time, just after May, maybe early June. We were talking for 3 months. So we're doing video calls for 3 months. I get involved with the athlete. I had his blood work back. I was like, what are we doing this year? What are we looking to do next year? And this is all before we'd even talked about what kind of package. I need to know the person and that we're tracking the same. So there's a lot of thought that goes into that and every part of the business.
Wow. Okay. You do research, that's for sure.
You've got to with products, you've got to with athletes, you've got to with people, because if you get the wrong people, as I've said before, the brand isn't the product. it's the people.
Yeah.
People buy from people.
That's right.
You know, and you've got to get the right message across with the right people in place, you know, so.
Talk to me about your journey, because when you first started the company, Brad actually mentioned that your nickname on the first video was the Herbo CEO. And I thought he was kidding when he said that. But you mentioned it too. So you've actually been on the road for 10 solid years, traveling the world and doing your own promotion and bringing the product Project 80 to everyone out there. You just finally became stable in California and Huntington Beach. So talk to me about those first 10 years and what it was like for you.
If you asked me would I do it again, I'd probably say no. That's what the first 10 years were like. No, look, I'm under no illusions, Dave. It's like, if you want to get somewhere in business or in life in general, you've got to put the hard yards in. Like, if anyone wants to be a successful bodybuilder, you aren't going to do it in 1, 2, 3 years, you know, unless you're an absolute freak, and even that might take you 6, 7, like Phil Heath.
Yeah.
You know, but I could only grow at a certain rate, so I was very well aware of what I'm always realistic with my timeline. So it's funny because I said at the age of 24, I'll give this until I'm 35. So like 11 years, 35 is a good number. I want to be in X position when I'm 35, and we're going to be there. But I'm always on with my numbers. But you have to, when you're not a big name, like now, if you're going to launch a brand now or do something now, you need a big name and a big following, or a ton of investment. I had neither.
Yeah.
So you have to rely on product quality and traveling to get face-to-face contact and build relationships. And once you forge those relationships, for God's sake, you take care of them, because your word is your bond. Whatever industry you're in, whatever line of work, if you make a commitment to someone, you give them your word, especially if you look in their eye and you take that effort and you go back on that, it's a downward spiral because word spreads. This industry is very small, so I've always been very careful about the commitments I've made and always honoured them, even if they've been at a loss to me, which many times they have. But you know what?
You did the right thing.
We have a good reputation on the back of it, and all my guys are the same. You know, Brad is the same, Dominic's the same.
Yeah.
You know, so it was a bit strange coming out here, if I'm being honest, because I'd never been over to the States. Everything's wrong. Like, it was a big gamble. I was just a kid. Like, I was mature for my age, but still, I mean, just to put it into context, if anyone over here from the States is watching, imagine jumping on a plane with 4 or 5 products in your backpack, jumping in a rental car, and just driving aimlessly from bricks and mortar store to bricks and mortar store, cold calling and presenting your products and trying to sell.
Wow.
And each day would be try and hit as many stores as possible, go on to booking.com, find out what the closest hotel to you, crash, hit the supermarket, buy your food, go to the gym, train, go back, microwave all your food for the next day, and you would do that endlessly. So, I mean, I used to come out and do maybe 8 weeks solid, because that was about the maximum amount of time I could stay in the States. And then I would go back to the UK, and that would be a rinse and repeat cycle for about the first 18 months before Frank came on board. And that's when things really took an upturn, because I had a man on the ground, like, full time, and he helped build the brand, and he pretty much built it for a year solid when I couldn't get over, when I was waiting for a visa. And that's the first time, Dave, that if I'd physically not been in the place, the business has grown. So it was a blessing in disguise, because it made me relax a little bit and release a little bit of the anxiety and stress placed upon myself for having to be everywhere for the business to succeed. You know, I think you'll see that with companies as they grow, like having the ability to pass over responsibility somewhat is probably one of the hardest steps, especially when it's your baby, you know. So the Herbo CEO name was because of that, and as you mentioned, I only moved to California and lost that. I had temporary homes, and that's how it originated, because people would see me on Instagram, I'd be in a different state, I'd be in a different hotel or a different person's house. And I'm like, where do you actually live? And I was like, I have no fixed address. Like, seriously, you'll never be able to mail me anything because I have no fixed address. So that was how it came about.
What is your vision or your mission for this company? Because now you're not so unknown anymore. People are aware of Project 80, and they know it's out there. It's about to get a lot more famous, I'm sure, or a lot more popular. But you just started doing this series for JTV, which we're really glad to have you. You have a lot to offer. You have a ton of knowledge. So are your associate and your athletes. What do you want to accomplish over the next few months/years?
Well, we've got a new dynamic that we've got to the brand. So the pink and black, our elite series, is always bricks and mortar, and we won't change that. So that's kind of kept the offline market in the USA away from us. But we've just launched the AD Lifeline, which it's almost like I've got two brands now, because that one's allowed to be online, and it allows me to put out a lot of health products and things that I'm really invested in now, because working with bodybuilders, because I did used to prep people until recently, and I always have bodybuilders reaching out about nutrition and they've got gut issues, because I had gut issues since I was like 2-3 years old, but that's another story, we'll touch on that another time. It allows me to put these products that are going to improve people's quality of life, health span and longevity in the sport. So that's going to be opened up online and give me a whole new thing to play with, the online market inside, finding the correct e-partners, Amazon, so that's really exciting for the coming years. Just regarding that line, regarding the performance line, we just always innovate. I've probably sat on 15-20 products now, so it's like that's the one thing that I'll say we've never struggled on. I'm always ahead, always researching, always learning. I make sure I set time out for that every single day, so that's never going to be a rate limiting factor for us. And it's why you'll see other companies are desperate. You've known me for a little while now, Dave, and I'm very relaxed about the direction of the company and what we're doing, because we're not scrambling.
Yeah.
Our eggs aren't all in one basket. We aren't going through one distributor who dictates what they sell every single month, depending on what spiffs they're getting or how much commission. We're not a one product brand where it's like we need to maximize this product before its life cycle's over. We have multiple SKUs which make up our product portfolio that perform best in sales. We have iterations afterwards, so it's like people probably know Shreddable as our fat burner that's just been crazy for the last 2 years. I've got version 2 which is going to be releasing late December for the new year, but I've already formulated version 3 just as on the back burner, because this is what I would say, it's like always be prepared. Legislation may change,
right?
So you don't want to be caught short in anything that you're doing, so always have contingency plans and backup plans. That goes for anything that you're involved in.
I really like when we talk even off camera, because your knowledge as far as nutrition and prep and different different type of diets and different kind of food and everything. You know so much about all that stuff, and it's very interesting to hear. So one of the things that we were excited when we started talking is that, we lost Matt Porter a few months ago. But what I really like about Matt's series is that he was very willing to give information to the general public. It's not about selling product all the time. It's a byproduct.
Yeah.
But when you're willing to give information that's hard to find and that people can actually really use every day in their training, their diet, you have a ton of that stuff to give, and I'm so excited that you'll be able to do that on the show. So I'm glad you came on board because of that.
Well, the thing is, Dave, the reason that me and Matt are similar in a couple of ways, we did it.
Right.
So he talked not just from anecdotal evidence or from a science point of view, stating studies.
Not just theory. Yeah.
He's put it inside his own body. And dude, I've done every single diet you can imagine. Throw one at me, I've done it. I did banana only diet, done it. Keto, no carbohydrate meals for 2 straight years.
Wow.
So I was writing for Flex magazine last year. I did, I think, 2 6-page spreads just on keto. But I was doing no carbohydrate diets, prepping people even to a pro level, using protein and fat cycling, fat loading during a diet, not fat loading pre-stage, which people might be familiar with, back in 2013.
Wow.
I've always been inquisitive about nutrition, as I've already spoken about, but protein only diet, I've done it. You know, high carbs, no fat, done it. Fruit only, done it. Vegan, done it. Raw diet, done it.
Wow.
You know, it's so I don't like to speak to someone on a subject unless I know how it feels in the body.
Yeah.
And that's why I can formulate products, because I know how things feel in the body. So every legal supplement, and some which are borderline and not legal, I've had to put in my body to know what the feel is, to see how it's going to translate into a natural supplement. You know, you have to know, and that's why me and Matt probably both did the same things, and we can speak from experience. It's very different being able to read a study to being able to explain to someone how they're going to feel when they're taking something, or how a diet's going to play out, how it might affect their digestion, precautions they might need to take beforehand, and fixes while something's ongoing. You know, so yeah, I wouldn't change it. It's held me back in any aspirations I wanted within the sport, but it's made me a little bit different because I can speak from experience on these topics.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
We're so glad to have you, man. Very, very proud of this partnership, and we're gonna have to. You have a lot that you're planning like next year already episodes. So you have a lot of ideas, and I can't wait for you to get them out there to the public.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for having us, and the goal is to make the West Coast the place to be again with JTV.
That's right. Thanks, Joe.